Have you ever broken up with someone and breathed a sigh of relief, thinking, finally, it's over? But what if a breakup isn't the end? What if the moment you say it's over is when the nightmare begins? In today's video, you'll hear 3 true stories about ex-lovers, people who once said they loved you with all their hearts but later made you live in fear, confusion, and desperation. A late night when a massive man shattered a car window and screamed for revenge over a single lie. A peaceful home that turned into the stage for an invisible crime, where an innocent, helpless creature paid the price for human rage. And a young woman relentlessly stalked, tracked, and nearly ambushed in a quiet neighborhood, all because she dared to break up with an unstable boyfriend. Each story is a warning. You never really know who you're dating until you try to leave them. Turn on the lights, lock the doors, and listen closely to every footstep behind you. Because when love mutates, it stops being a feeling and becomes a threat. It all started like any typical college romance, with a right swipe on the Bumble dating app. Chris, a junior majoring in business administration, didn't expect much from online chatting, but this time was different. The girl, Kelly, had a radiant smile, long black hair, and eyes full of life. The more they talked, the more Chris was drawn in by her natural charm, humor, and their shared love for espresso, indie music, and mutual hatred for Monday morning classes. They met first at the library, then later at a coffee shop near the dorms. Within a month, Kelly agreed to be Chris's girlfriend. At first, everything was wonderful. She was cheerful, sweet, and always supportive of Chris's academic projects. They took cute photos together, went to movies, and had lunch in the campus quad. To Chris, Kelly felt like a refreshing breeze through his otherwise quiet life. But like all winds, not every breeze is gentle. After a few months, Chris began to notice the early warning signs. Kelly texted him every 10 to 15 minutes, constantly asking where he was, who he was with, and what he was doing. If he took a few minutes to reply, she would swing from sweet to furious. At first, Chris chalked it up to concern or loving too much, but it soon turned into a storm. Every time Chris hung out with friends, his phone would explode with texts, missed calls, and interrogating questions. Once, because he failed to send a check-in photo at the exact moment she demanded, Kelly exploded, accusing him of cheating. She forced him to share his live location at all times. Gradually, Chris felt like he was being watched, not by an app, but by a partner who couldn't control her mind. As love turned into a burden, Chris began to crave freedom. But what he didn't realize was that leaving Kelly wouldn't just be difficult, it would become the beginning of a living nightmare. The longer they were together, the more Kelly revealed her true nature, a person who couldn't tolerate even the slightest bit of privacy from her partner. At first, Chris thought it was just a form of intense love. After all, who hasn't been a little jealous when their partner hangs out with someone of the opposite sex, right? But Kelly went far beyond anything normal. To her, every moment Chris didn't reply to a message was a betrayal. Every outing without her was an act of infidelity. She started by asking him to share his live location, 24/7. "Just for peace of mind," she said sweetly. "In case something happens to you, I'll know where you are." Chris hesitated, but eventually agreed, just to avoid another pointless argument. From that moment, his phone became an invisible collar, and Kelly held the leash. Anytime Chris stayed too long at one place, or if his phone's battery was low or the signal was weak and his location didn't update, it would ring nonstop. Once, While studying at a coffee shop with a female classmate, Kelly received 10 missed calls. When he finally stepped outside, she was already there, standing in front of the cafe. Her eyes were blazing, her breath rapid, like he had just walked out of someone else's bed. Chris's friends began to avoid him, not wanting to get dragged into drama with that crazy girl. He became increasingly isolated, just like Kelly, who, he discovered, only had 2 friends, and even they seemed to speak to her with caution. She didn't just control him, she possessed him, like a wild animal clinging to an old toy, gnawing it hour after hour, refusing to let anyone else touch it. Until that night. Chris had only planned to have a few beers at his best friend Kevin's place, a tight-knit group of guys from high school, but the drinks kept coming and the fun escalated. The group ended up at a bar near campus, singing and shouting like seniors on graduation week. Chris had turned off his location earlier. He didn't want to be bothered. 11 p.m., he came home, and Kelly, like a ghost, was already standing at the door. Her long hair was soaked with sweat, her eyes wide, burning with rage. She said nothing, just stepped forward and slapped him hard. Then again, then screamed, even punched him in the chest. "You bastard! You think I wouldn't find out? Cheating piece of shit! Did you sleep with her? Let me see your phone. Unlock it." Chris stepped back, stunned. When he grabbed her wrist to stop her from hitting him again, she immediately screamed like an actress on stage. "Let me go! You're abusing a woman. I'll call the cops." Lights turned on in the neighboring houses. A door cracked open. Someone started recording. Chris stood at a crossroads. Either continue enduring this, or free himself before everything spiraled out of control. And he chose. "We're done, Kelly. For good." After the dramatic breakup, Chris thought it was over. He blocked Kelly on every platform, cut all contact, and swore never to go back. But what he didn't expect was, Kelly didn't retreat. She escalated. It started with long, rambling text messages from unknown numbers. The content swung between desperation and threats. One day, a message soaked in tears pleaded, "I can't live without you." The next day, it was raging fury. "I'm going to destroy your life the way you destroyed mine." Chris didn't respond. He learned to stay silent, to scroll past her name like it was a bad memory. But Kelly wasn't the kind of person who stayed quiet for long. One cold November evening, Chris was home alone. His parents were out, leaving the house peacefully quiet as usual. He had just lain down, blanket pulled up to his chest, when loud banging erupted at the front door, harsh, violent. Chris shot upright, heart pounding. He checked the clock, 1:12 a.m. The banging came with shouting, "Open up, you bastard! I'm going to kill you." He froze for a moment, then crept into the hallway and looked out the second-floor window. Under the dim porch light stood a large man with thick beard, growling like an animal at the door. Chris recognized him immediately. He was the man from Kelly's last Instagram post, her new boyfriend. The guy was slamming the door, holding what looked like a metal pipe. Chris's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He didn't answer. A text came right after. "Come out, asshole." Ignoring Kelly? "I'll teach you a lesson." Then came the chilling sound, glass shattering. Chris ran to the living room window and saw the man smashing the family SUV's window. Shards of glass burst onto the driveway like sparks. Without hesitation, Chris dialed 911, voice trembling but steady enough to speak. "Please hurry. My ex-girlfriend's boyfriend is vandalizing property and threatening to kill me." As he waited for the police, the banging, screaming, and text messages didn't stop. Every minute stretched into eternity. until flashing red and blue lights finally pierced through the dark like a miracle. The man stepped back, but didn't flee. Police drew their weapons and tackled him right on the front porch. Chris stepped outside, stunned, still gripping his phone with the threatening messages ready as evidence. The man screamed as they handcuffed him. "You're gonna pay. You think I don't know what you said to Kelly?" Chris froze. "I haven't messaged her since the breakup." The man glared at Chris, eyes burning with rage. "You dare lie? I saw every message you sent." But Chris hadn't sent anything. So then, who was texting her? From Chris's number. After that terrifying night, Chris went to the police station and filed for a restraining order against Kelly and her boyfriend, whose name was Javier Cruz. The evidence was undeniable: security camera footage, threatening texts, and the smashed SUV. Within days, the court granted the order. Chris thought it was finally over. He even unblocked Kelly once, just to send a single message. "I've filed a restraining order. You need help. Don't ever contact me again." Kelly replied with just one line: "I don't know what you're talking about." And then she vanished. But Chris began noticing strange things. A week after the incident, his best friend sent him a screenshot from Instagram. The photo of Kelly and Javier had been deleted. Her entire profile was wiped clean, as if Kelly had never existed. But what unsettled Chris wasn't the silence. It was someone who kept texting Javier from an account impersonating Chris. Messages, taunting and provocative, kept pouring in, adding fuel to the fire. Chris went to the phone carrier to investigate. No trace. A temporary number, one that could be generated from anywhere. That's when he realized this wasn't just jealousy. It was manipulation, strategy, and something deeply twisted. A psychological game that Kelly had crafted from the shadows, using Javier as her pawn, social media as her weapon, and hiding behind a perfect mask. Months later, Chris still jumped at the sound of a knock at the door after dark. Every time a message came from an unknown number, his chest tightened. Because even though Kelly had disappeared, he wasn't sure she had left his life. Amber never imagined that her first relationship would become the source of her nightmares. She was only 19 that year, living with her single mother in a run-down neighborhood where the streetlights flickered and the wail of ambulance sirens echoed nearly every night. In that world, Keen appeared like a suit of armor, tall, stoic, and seemingly capable of keeping every other man away from her. They met through friends, and at first, Keen seemed like the kind of boyfriend every girl dreamed of. Always on time, always protective, always standing between her and the rest of the world. But within just a few months, Amber began to realize something more terrifying than the dark alleyways of her neighborhood. Keen didn't love her. He owned her. Jealousy was always present. No one was allowed to text Amber, not even classmates. Keen would lose it if she smiled too much at the cashier at the corner store. Once, he got angry just because she liked a photo of a friend's puppy. Amber knew that wasn't love, but she stayed. Not because she was weak, but because she was afraid. Keen's eyes were always calm until he got angry, and then they turned blank, like the eyes of a wild animal. Once, he threw her phone against the wall because she hadn't replied within 10 minutes. And because she lived in a neighborhood where walking alone at night could mean never coming back, Keen's looming presence, though terrifying, was the only shield she had. Amber felt trapped between two nightmares. Outside, a cold and dangerous world. Inside, the man she loved and feared more than anything else. But she knew, if she waited too long, one day she wouldn't be able to get out at all. Amber knew she had to get away from Keen. But in a toxic relationship, Leaving is never simple. She planned it in silence. No face-to-face meeting, no chance for him to talk her out of it. Just one message, short and clear. "This has gone too far. I can't do this anymore. We're done." She hit send at 8 p.m. Her hands trembled, and immediately, her phone vibrated. A call from Keen, then another, and another. Amber didn't pick up. She knew if she heard his voice, she might falter. But Keen didn't stop. After the fifth call came the first message. "Who do you think you are? Leaving me?" The message was long, aggressive, mostly in all caps, filled with insults interspersed with desperate pleas. Amber bit her lip and didn't reply. She didn't want to get dragged into another emotional spiral. Her mother was working the night shift at a grocery store 5 blocks away. The house was now just Amber and her little cat, Nala. That was what scared her most. Keen knew her mother wasn't home. 10 p.m. Amber turned off all the lights, locked every door, and took Nala to bed. But she couldn't sleep. Her eyes stared at the ceiling, heart pounding at every small sound from outside. 1 a.m. A faint sound echoed from the living room, like footsteps, soft and slow. Amber sat up, holding her breath. Maybe Mom came home early, she told herself, but unease crept in. She tiptoed out of the bedroom, stepped into the hallway and called out, "Mom?" No answer. She turned on the living room light. Empty. The front door was still locked. Sweat broke down her back. She returned to her room, where Nala still lay curled on the bed. Amber called her mother. Her mom reassured her. It was probably just her imagination from all the stress. She said she'd be home in 45 minutes. Amber nodded silently, trying to hold back tears. She lay down and gently stroked Nala, but something was wrong. The cat's eyes were wide open, vacant. Amber touched her back. No breathing, no heartbeat. Nala was dead. Her heart clenched. She cradled the cat's body in despair, fighting the urge to scream. Amber understood instantly. Keen. He had gotten into the house, and he left a message. The cold, lifeless body of the creature she loved most. Amber backed away, clutching Nala's small, lifeless body. Her eyes were wide with panic, her throat too tight to utter a word. Every survival instinct inside her screamed, "Run! Hide! He's still in the house!" She stepped backward toward the closet, heart pounding like it might explode. Her bedroom door had no deadbolt, just a simple turn knob. She locked it, rushed into the closet, pulled out her phone, and called 911, whispering, "Police, please, my ex-boyfriend. He broke in. He killed my cat. I think he's still inside." She was mid-sentence when a floorboard creaked in the hallway. Amber held her breath. She pressed herself into the corner of the closet, eyes fixed on the sliver of light between the doors. From that gap, she saw the light beneath her bedroom door flicker and go out. He was in the room. Her chest tightened. Every sound became unnaturally loud. The faint groan of wood under slow footsteps, the heavy animal-like breathing of a predator stalking prey in the night. Amber's phone was still connected to the 911 dispatcher. She could hear the woman's voice whispering through the earpiece. "Officers are on the way. They'll be there in 3 minutes. Stay where you are." The bedroom door creaked open. The hallway light cast a faint silhouette, a tall figure, dark hoodie, head slightly bowed. He stood there for a moment, then stepped toward the bed where Nala's body lay. He sat down, growled, "Now you know what it feels like to be abandoned, don't you?" Amber covered her mouth. She couldn't cry. She couldn't make a sound. Suddenly, the wail of police sirens pierced the distance. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. The man shot up, screamed, "You called the cops?" Then he bolted out of the room. Amber heard the back door fling open, the slap of footsteps on concrete, then silence, swallowed by the night. She stepped out of the closet, trembling, collapsed to the floor, sobbing without sound. Police burst in moments later, guns drawn, sweeping the house. But Keene was gone. Amber told them everything. They gathered evidence, photographed Nala's body, took her statement, and promised to investigate, though there were no clear signs of forced entry. But Amber knew. He had been inside, and he would be back. After that horrifying night, Amber and her mother had no choice but to replace every lock in the house. Every door, every window was reinforced with bars and wooden bolts. No spare keys were left hidden in the backyard ever again. Amber couldn't sleep for nights. The sound of distant footsteps, a cat meowing far away, or even just the wind was enough to jolt her awake, heart pounding in the dark. The next day, they filed for an emergency protective order. Fortunately, the judge approved it. Keene was prohibited from coming within 200 feet of Amber and barred from contacting her by any means. Amber never replied to Keene's messages again, not once. She deleted all her social media accounts, changed her phone number, and even altered her route to school, just to avoid the shadow of someone she once called a boyfriend. The last time she saw Keene was in court. He didn't say a word, just sat there, eyes blank, staring at the floor as if nothing was wrong. The judge reviewed the file, listened to the statement, and coldly signed the long-term restraining order. Since then, Keene vanished from her life like a nightmare dissolving after a stormy night. But some nights, Amber still wakes up in a panic. She feels like someone is standing at the foot of her bed, staring. Then she turns on the light. No one's there. Only darkness and memory. Little Nala is gone. But those wide, terrified eyes from that night remain burned into her mind. She's never forgotten, because some people leave without a trace, and some leave behind fear, etched into every door frame, every breath, every dream. Emma met Mike during her junior year of high school. She was an energetic girl, played softball for the school team. Mike, a tall, broad-shouldered guy, was a football player from a neighboring school. They connected through Facebook. A casual message one evening turned into long conversations that stretched into early mornings. Within just a few weeks, they were officially dating. Emma had never had a boyfriend before. Mike was the first person who made her feel special. But teenage love is nothing like a fairy tale. Mike didn't take Emma to fancy dinners. They'd drive aimlessly around town, eat burritos, and sit in parking lots listening to music. For Emma, that was romantic enough. But one thing made her uneasy. In the 6 months they were together, Mike never introduced her to any of his friends. He always said, "They don't matter, only you do." Still, Emma started sensing that something was off. Mike had a short fuse. One time, just because she replied late to a text, he slammed his fist into the steering wheel so hard the horn blared for seconds. Another time, when she casually chatted with a male teammate from her softball team, Mike went silent for 3 whole days. Emma told herself, maybe he just loves me too much. But one day, she realized her heart no longer fluttered when she saw Mike. A boy from her school, Andrew, began to catch her eye. Gentle, thoughtful, and a good listener. And Emma knew it was time to end things. What she forgot was this. Mike wasn't the kind of person who accepted being left. Beneath his calm exterior was a storm, an anger smoldering like embers behind a cold wall. She just didn't know yet. When that fire ignited, It could burn everything to the ground. Emma knew she had to end things before it went too far. She no longer had feelings for Mike, and her heart was leaning more and more toward Andrew, the one who brought her a sense of peace and gentleness Mike never could. One autumn afternoon, Emma texted Mike, "I want to meet and talk." He replied immediately, "About what? Is there a problem?" "Just something I think we should be honest about." "What kind of honesty are you talking about?" Emma stopped replying. She knew if she said more, Mike would explode over text. She waited until they met in person. When Mike picked her up, Emma had barely sat in the car when the atmosphere became suffocating. They drove around town in silence. Finally, she said, "Mike, I think we should stop. I don't feel the same anymore." Mike gripped the steering wheel, veins bulging. "What did you just say?" "We're not right for each other. I want a healthy relationship. You deserve someone else." He slammed his hand on the dashboard, making her flinch. "Who is it? You're seeing someone else, aren't you?" Emma shook her head, trying to stay calm. But Mike wasn't listening. His voice rose, face flushed red, fists pounding the wheel again. When she reached for the door, he grabbed her arm. "Don't go. I'll take you home. Just sit still." The car started moving again, but the road to Emma's house slipped farther and farther away. They passed neighborhoods, even the school, then turned onto an empty road leading into the woods, a place she had never seen. Emma panicked. "Where are you going? I want to go home." Mike stayed silent, lips tightly pressed. When the car stopped on the shoulder of a remote grassy path, no lights, no houses in sight, Emma knew she was in danger. "Get out." "Number, are you crazy?" "No, I just want to talk. Talk." Emma yanked the door handle, bolted, and ran. Mike shouted behind her, but didn't follow. She called her mom, gasping for air. Her mother picked her up at the nearest spot where there was light. That night, Mike messaged, "I'm sorry, I just lost control. You're everything to me." Emma didn't respond. She thought it was over. But 2 nights later, when she left her house to visit Andrew, there was a man in a hood following behind her, matching her steps, matching her breath, matching her darkness. That night, the early autumn chill crept through the thin hoodie draped over Emma's shoulders. She walked briskly down the quiet street toward Andrew's house, just 2 blocks from her own. The street was deserted, not a single car in sight. No street lights, just the sound of footsteps. That weren't hers. At first, Emma thought she was imagining things, but as she quickened her pace, the footsteps behind her did too. She glanced across the street. A shadowy figure, hood pulled low, was striding about 30 feet behind her. They matched her pace, silent, steady, relentless. A cold shiver raced down Emma's spine. She pulled out her phone and quickly texted Andrew, "Come to the door, now. Someone's following me." Without waiting for a reply, she broke into a near run. At that moment, the footsteps behind her turned into pounding strides. She looked back. The figure was now sprinting toward her. Emma screamed and ran full speed. Luckily, Andrew's house appeared just beyond the curve. The door flew open and he stepped out, eyes wide with panic. Emma shouted, "Lock the door! He's after me!" Seconds before she reached the door, the figure stopped in the middle of the street, standing motionless. Andrew pulled her inside. As Emma turned to look out the window, the man turned around and walked away, his silhouette fading into the darkness. But Emma knew. That was Mike. His tall frame, heavy stride, the fury in his run. She had seen it all before, when he was angry. It didn't stop there. The next night, Emma's phone received a call from a number with no caller ID, no voice, just breathing. Slow, long, cold. Then the line went dead. The following day, her father spotted Mike's car parked in the shadows at the end of their street. The familiar beat-up vehicle, paint peeling, license plate removed. Emma trembled. Her father decided not to wait any longer. That night, he drove Emma to Mike's house, knocked on the door. Mike opened it, looking puzzled. "You bother my daughter one more time, I'm calling the cops. This isn't a warning. I've got your car's plate. I've got photos. One more move, and there's a restraining order." Mike looked at him and said nothing. Emma sat in the car, window cracked, hearing every word. Mike gave a slight nod and closed the door. For the first time, Emma saw him. Silent. Silent like a predator waiting for the right moment. After the night Emma's father confronted Mike in person, everything seemed to settle. No more texts, no more cars are parked at the end of the street, no more shadows lurking behind her on the way home. Emma thought she was finally free, but the psychological scars, those didn't fade. Even though Mike had disappeared, Emma still couldn't sleep soundly. Every time she stepped outside, she would glance over her shoulder. She changed her route to school, avoiding dark streets and quiet alleys. Her phone always had GPS tracking on, shared with her mom and Andrew. She kept dreaming about Mike. In those dreams, he stood at the foot of her bed, face blurry and undefined, except for the glowing red eyes and the labored breathing. She would wake up drenched in sweat, clutching the blanket like it was the only weapon she had left. Months later, Emma and Andrew officially became a couple. He was patient, gentle, and never pushed her into anything. But deep inside Emma, there were still tiny thorns, the ones Mike had planted and left behind. Years later, when she looked back at that first relationship, Emma didn't remember the hugs, the late-night burritos, or the whispered, "I love yous." What stayed with her was the car turning around at midnight, the shadow in the hoodie, and the fear of loving the wrong person. She learned something valuable. Not everyone who says "I love you" knows what love really means, and not every feeling deserves forgiveness. Mike was only in the first chapter, but for Emma, it was the chapter where the door to life cracked open, and the devil walked in for the first time. 3 stories, 3 breakups, but none of them ever expected that the one who once held them close could be the same one who dragged them into an endless nightmare. Love can be a remedy, but sometimes it's the spark, and you only realize the danger when everything's already burned. If these stories made your spine tingle, like the video to let me know you're still awake. Comment if you've ever seen red flags no one else noticed. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next chilling tale. Each week, new whispers from the dark are waiting for you. See you next nightfall, and remember, don't open the door when someone calls baby after midnight.